When the Toon Monsoon event happened, we'd spent several years developing a computer model that simulated what happened with rainfall hitting the ground and causing these floods around urban landscapes. And of course we set this up in Newcastle, where we're working. We compared what happened with what our model suggested would happen and found actually it worked pretty well. So as soon as this happened, we started getting in touch with people in the city council and the university to discuss how we could use the model to help. The research that my team's been doing has been in three areas. It's firstly the rainstorms, how often they happen and how big they are. Secondly, the impact they have on the urban landscape with flooding. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, what we can do to manage that impact. The biggest research benefit of us working with the estates team and other end users is the immediate testing and application of our models, because without that testing and validation, we don't know if they're working properly. So we get an immediate impact from using them. I think the one thing that I'm most proud of is that we've taken this really very sophisticated, complicated hydrodynamic flood model, CityCat, and we've got people using it. We've got water engineers, we've got designers and planners using it. I think the university estates team are genuinely leading by example here, because it would have been easy to carry on with the old way of doing things. Everybody's familiar with the design and planning in the old way. But they've accepted that things had to change, and they've made this jump using the new blue-green principles in all of their new design.
We've been working together to identify areas on the campus that are vulnerable to urban flooding, and as part of that process, our colleagues in civil engineering have been helping us to redevelop better, to manage water, surface water on campus better.
Yeah, exactly. So we're involved in a couple of schemes, or quite a few schemes around campus. The main ones being at Parkview Student Village, where we've been involved in trying out different buildings and level layouts to see what effect that will have on the flooding. And also at Science Central, where we've been saying where the flow paths will be, which areas are likely to have water flowing through them, and then putting sustainable drainage. So I've got a model called CityCat, which has been developed within the School of Civil Engineering and Geoscience. It's a fine resolution model, so it takes the whole of a campus and looks at 1 metre square grids all over it, so it can simulate pavements are included, all that side of things, so it can tell you exactly the flow path around all the buildings and all the pathways.
We've been combining the use of this with our historical knowledge and our expertise in ESS.
We've invested in the estate to protect our facilities against flooding, so we've looked at what our critical infrastructure is, things like high voltage substations, MRI scanners, important pieces of research equipment. We've planted more green areas on campus and invested in features like rain gardens and downpipe planters. That's made the estate a more pleasant and green space, as well as reducing overland flows in rainfall events. At Science Central, a development site where the university is investing in the Urban Sciences building, we've invested in sustainable urban drainage systems. So working with the City Council at the site, we are installing features such as swales, but also using research funding, we're installing research infrastructure, including a sustainable urban drainage laboratory. Other organisations could benefit from the approach that we've taken by applying a risk-based approach to understanding their flood risk. Think about what's important to you in your business, what would upset you in the event of a heavy rainfall event causing flooding in your buildings, and think about the measures that you can take to protect against that damage.
Yes, so Northumbrian Water have had huge benefits of being part of this Learning Action Alliance. So there is the trust that's built up between all of the partners. There's the ability to learn from each other. So we all have different skill sets, we all have different knowledge that we can bring to the table. So we're thinking about the problems that Newcastle has today, but we're also thinking about the problems that Newcastle are going to have in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time. We know that this is a long-term plan, when you consider things like climate change, when you consider things like growth for the city, urban creep within the city, those are wide-ranging and far-reaching topics, and we need to make sure that we're thinking about those now so that we're ready for the future. So it's really important to work in collaboration, because water knows no boundaries. Water doesn't just fall from the sky and stay within Newcastle University's area. It moves through the city, it moves into the sewerage network, it moves across the town moors, it moves across the university's buildings. We had some very horrific flooding that happened in the city in 2012 that created almost, I think it's about 78 million worth of damage indirectly and directly to the city. It touched everybody's infrastructure. It wasn't just Northumbrian Waters, and if we're going to solve that issue and reduce the flood risk in the city, we have to work together.
The traditional way of dealing with surface water flooding was perhaps to put more pipes in the ground and to build tanks for storing water till it could be disposed of into the river network. And we've got to find ways of keeping the water on the surface, managing it on the surface without spending money on those expensive underground assets. But we've got to understand that we need to work together in partnership with other stakeholders and find out what their issues are, what the problems are, and how we can maybe turn some of those problems into benefits. This was an opportunity to work with the university, both the operational staff and the academic staff, to understand what they could help us with on managing surface water within the city. It includes wide-ranging issues such as involving them in its planning for surface water management on new developments, so we don't build in problems for future generations.
The experience of 2012 has affected the way we now plan future developments. Science Central, Parkview Student Village, we now consider surface water management in far greater detail. We're providing additional green space. We're managing water on the surface instead of automatically relaying it straight to drains. And we're looking to the future to make the urban landscape more sustainable. Working together both inside and outside the university, we look for solutions to citywide surface water management issues, not just those which affect individual landowners. I would hope that we can continue to work with our academic colleagues and city stakeholders to provide solutions to citywide problems, and that Science Central becomes an exemplar for blue-green infrastructure.
Basically, the university started about 3 years ago meeting to talk about things like Science Central, green infrastructure and sustainable drainage systems. And we started to bring a lot of the partners together. And on the back of that, we were able to secure some NERC funding on the blue-green cities to try and address what the cities of the future are going to be like. Basically, we've put more and more impermeable area into our cities, and we're now moving into the climate change era. Whether it's climate change or not, the weather has definitely changed, and we are getting a lot of very, very intense rainstorms in our cities. Everywhere is getting flooded, one city at a time, and it was Newcastle's turn. So we had the Toon Monsoon, and we brought the city to a standstill. Better working together philosophy is played out over time, but then you have to do something. That's the absolutely crucial thing. So if you look at Science Central, you can see that we're building about 14 new buildings here. It's kind of regeneration of a city. So we insisted as a university, because we call ourselves a civic university, that we must do things better. And we've taken every opportunity at Science Central to take us from what was quite a modest and traditional set of flood control measures to an absolutely visionary, world-leading set of measures.